Sometimes, my dear, the ache doesn't announce itself with thunder. It arrives as a quiet rearranging of the furniture inside your heart. This is the story of Eleanor Hale, who once believed routine was the most fragile thing in the world, until the day she learned it was actually the scaffolding holding everything up. Eleanor met Thomas when promises were still easy to make and the years ahead looked like a long ribbon of golden road. They were 22 and 24, more certainty than plan, more laughter than money. They married in a small church with windows that breathed light into the aisle, and they promised each other the simple things, to try, to listen, to be honest when it was hard. Life, as it does, filled in the rest. They bought a modest house with creaky floors that complained each winter. They raised 2 children, Julia and Mark, who painted the years with birthday candles, school concerts, muddy cleats by the door, and the wild, holy chaos of family dinners where someone always forgot the salad in the fridge. Eleanor cooked on a dented stovetop, and Thomas worked late, saying he was building something for all of us. She believed him. She believed in him. 40 years is a long time to collect small habits. Thomas always took his coffee black. Eleanor always padded the morning with music. Every spring she washed the curtains. Every September he cleaned the gutters. On their 32nd anniversary, they held hands in the dark and listened to rain drum the roof. "We made a life," she whispered. And he squeezed back, "We did." But habit can become fog, and inside fog, people can lose the shape of each other. In the winter of their 40th year, the fog had been thick. Thomas's jokes arrived late, if at all. Eleanor started saving her stories for friends, because at home they seemed to land and fall, heavy and unamused. There were no slam doors, no sharp words, just drift. And drift, my dear, is dangerous because it feels like nothing until it's everything. One Tuesday morning, in the plain light of a plain day, Thomas set his mug down carefully, as if the sound it made might decide the rest of their lives. "Ellie," he said, still using the nickname she hadn't heard in months, "I can't do this anymore." She thought he meant the job, the hours, the relentless ledger of adult responsibility. But he kept talking, and the words were not about a job. They were about a life he suddenly feared had been lived like a careful sketch, never colored in. He said phrases that people say when they're trying to make sense of a yearning they don't yet understand. "I need to find myself. I've lost who I am. I want to feel alive again." And then the quiet sentence that knocks the wind out of a house. "I'm leaving." Eleanor did not plead. She did not bargain with history. She stood there, hands damp with dishwater, heart shivering like an animal in the rain, and she said very softly, "Then go kindly, Thomas. Go with the truth. Don't make me smaller to make your leaving easier." He blinked, as if she'd taken something fragile from his hands, but he nodded. And by sunset, a portion of their closet had become a small, echoing cave. Thomas left with a suitcase and a face that looked both 10 years older and 10 years younger, as if he had traded the weight of duty for the weight of possibility. That first night, Eleanor slept on his side of the bed. It was not defiance. It was proximity. She pressed her cheek to the pillow where his scent lingered, and she learned the sound a house makes when it knows it's been abandoned. A long, patient exhale. Days unspooled. Grief, my dear, is not a straight corridor. It's a house with many rooms, and you wander all of them. Eleanor wandered anger, then tenderness, then nostalgia, and strange relief. She learned how to boil an egg, for one. She learned which chair felt least lonely. She went to the market, and came home with pears that bruised in the paper bag because she forgot to carry them carefully, the way Thomas always reminded her. Don't let the pears bump heads, Elle. It took a month for the neighbors to ask, with careful faces, "How's Thomas?" And Eleanor, who hated gossip, told the truth, without decoration. "He's gone to look for something he thinks he lost." They nodded, the way people nod when they are grateful it's not them, and then they brought casseroles that tasted like apology. One afternoon, Julia arrived with tears she tried to hide and rage she did not. "How could he?" she demanded, flinging her bag to the sofa. "After everything? After you carried this family on your back?" Eleanor took her daughter's hands and said, "What breaks in your father didn't begin yesterday. We were both there when silence was growing. Anger is hot, but may we choose warmth instead? Warmth, not heat." That became Eleanor's vow. She made appointments, the kind people postpone, the dentist, the doctor, the optometrist who told her she needed new glasses, and she laughed, because of course she did. She had failed to see what was right in front of her for years. She joined a book club and a group that replanted trees in a strip of neglected park by the river. She learned the names of small things, the birds that visited her windowsill, the herb that made her soups taste like a patient afternoon. There were nights when loneliness sat down like an uninvited guest. There were mornings when the light came in as if it had decided to love her first. She did not become a different person. She became a person she could recognize without blinking. Meanwhile, Thomas rented a modern apartment with sleek furniture that looked like it lived on magazine pages and not in ordinary air. He bought new shirts, a younger haircut, a scent that came in a heavy blue bottle promising oceans. He took long walks in neighborhoods where no one waved because no one knew him. He tried restaurants that stacked food in careful towers, and he filed away their names like trophies. He was living, he told himself, and living had the shape of any place that was not the old place. And then, of course, there was someone. Her name was Camilla. She laughed from the back of her throat and placed her hand on his forearm when she was making a point, as if to borrow his attention fully. She said she liked older men because they were steady. And Thomas, oh, Thomas, felt like a lighthouse again. He bought tickets to concerts where the bass rattled in his chest like a second heartbeat. He danced, badly. She smiled, brightly. For a while, this worked. But you cannot build a life out of weekends any more than you can build a bridge out of confetti. Camilla loved the version of Thomas that showed up with an appetite for novelty, not the one who woke at 3 a.m. with the old ache of responsibility. She loved the playlists and the wine flights, not the stories about gutters and taxes and the gentle tyranny of routines that feed a family. She did not love quiet. Thomas, who had left quiet because it sounded like death, discovered that sometimes quiet is the soul catching its breath. The first crack arrived as casually as a Tuesday. Camilla canceled dinner because she needed space. Space turned into silence, and silence turned into absence. She did not leave with a suitcase. She left by gradually taking her laughter elsewhere. One morning, Thomas opened the blue-bottled cologne, and it smelled like a joke he didn't get anymore. Regret is a patient teacher. It waits until you are still. Thomas began thinking about the thunderless Tuesday when he had left. He remembered the way Eleanor had said, "Go kindly." He hadn't, not really. He had tried to go cleanly, but clean is not kind. Kindness is messy. It writes letters. It returns to the room. It sits in the discomfort and tells the truth until the silence admits it was wrong. He started walking by the old street again like a tourist of his own past. He did not approach the house. He observed from the familiarity of his car, from the anonymity of distance. The curtains were different. The garden. How had she made it look so alive? The mailbox had a fresh coat of paint, and the little flag stuck less like it had learned cooperation. One evening, Thomas finally wrote an email. Then he deleted it. He tried again with a text. Deleted that too. Pride is stubborn, but loneliness turns even pride into a negotiable instrument. He sent 3 words. Are you well? Eleanor read the message without flinching. She wrote back, I am. He wanted more. He wanted to ask if the pears still bruised. He wanted to say he had returned the shirt that made him look like he was auditioning for another man's life. Instead, he typed, May I call? And because time had made her tenderness braver than her fear, Eleanor replied, Tomorrow, after 7. They spoke like people who know where all the trap doors are, carefully, kindly. He told her about the new place, the new attempts, the way music was loud enough to drown out doubt until it wasn't. She told him about the trees by the river and the children at the community garden who named worms like pets. They said goodnight, the way you say it when you're not sure if there will be another hello. There was. A week later, he asked if he could stop by. Eleanor said yes, partly because she was curious, and partly because forgiveness had become a practice in her life. It kept her house warmer than anger ever had. When Thomas stepped onto the old porch, he looked like someone who had taken a long trip without a map. He wasn't broken. He was simply returned to his size. He said, You look well. And she did. Not young, never young again, but lit from within by the ordinary mercy of days she had chosen. They sat at the kitchen table where Julia once spilt lemonade and Mark once carved a smiley face into the wood with a fork and got grounded for a week. Eleanor poured tea. They talked about practical things. The gutters, still his territory, he joked. The roof, finally replaced. The neighbor's new dog, loud but adorable. They also talked about the other things. The way grief had thinned her and then made room for her. The way he had chased a horizon only to find it was a mirror. He said, I made a terrible mistake. Voice low, eyes bright. I told myself our life was a winter that would never end, when really I had simply forgotten how to make a fire. Eleanor listened without interrupting. She had no desire to inventory every bruise. Wounds were not invoices. We forgot together, she answered. I kept the house tidy, but not always hospitable. I mistook silence for peace. I stopped inviting you to know me, and you stopped knocking. He nodded, grateful for the mercy, but not excused by it. If I could go back, he began. You can't, she said gently, but you can go forward better. They cried, but not the wild crying of drama, the clean kind, the kind that rinses the corners. They did not make grand gestures. They made tea. He asked if he could come sometimes to fix the things that needed fixing. She said she could call a handyman, and he smiled, agreeing, then admitted he was asking for a reason to stay a little longer than a cup of tea allowed. Then say that, Eleanor replied. Say you want to stay and listen to how the house sounds now." So he did. He stayed an hour. Then he stayed on Fridays to help carry the heavy bags from the market. He stayed for the kind of conversations that are less conversation than presence. He did not move back in. He did not ask. He understood that forgiveness doesn't return you to the old address. It invites you to behave as if goodness still matters. Months folded into a new kind of familiar. They attended Mark's recital and sat in the same row with a careful seat between them, like a respectful memory. They celebrated Julia's promotion with a dinner where the toasts were short and true. Thomas learned to say "I was wrong" without attaching a weather report. Eleanor learned to receive the apology without turning it into a museum piece. One spring, Eleanor fell ill. A small thing, the doctor said, but it made the house look steep. Thomas brought soup and changed light bulbs and sat in the quiet without trying to sell it as anything else. "Thank you," she said one evening, "for showing up without a flag." "What do you mean?" he asked. "Without planting a claim," she smiled. "You are simply here." He did not ask for more, but regret, as you know, keeps its own calendar. One afternoon, on a bench by the river, Thomas said, "I love you, Elle. I never stopped. I lost the habit of saying it out loud until it sounded like a lie in my own mouth. If there is any path back—" Eleanor placed her hand over his. She said, "There is a path forward. It may look at times like friendship, at times like family, at times like the soft echo of something we once wore like a coat. I can offer you my kindness. I can offer you my company. I cannot offer you the house we burned when we forgot to tend the fire." He breathed in, as if the air itself might turn into a new kind of courage. "Then teach me how to carry the water," he whispered, "so I at least know I'm helping." They laughed. They walked home slowly. They did not call it reconciliation. Too neat a word. They called it presence. And presence, my dear, is both humbler and holier than romance when romance has been misused. Years later, yes, years, Eleanor sat by the same kitchen window where Thomas once put down his mug and ended a continent. She watched morning color the rim of her teacup. She had not remarried. She had not become a saint. She had simply become someone who learned that love is not a possession you keep. It is a practice you do. Thomas kept practicing too. He stopped chasing a feeling and began honoring a life. He took Julia's kids to the museum where he explained with a patience he never found when his own were small why the dinosaurs mattered and why the gift shop could wait. He cheered at Mark's late-blooming marathon, handing him a banana at mile 19 with the ceremonial seriousness of a priest. On their would-have-been 50th anniversary, Thomas brought Eleanor daisies, their old, modest favorite, and a note that said, "Thank you for not turning your back when I had turned mine. I regret leaving. I will always regret leaving. But I do not regret the chance you've given me to live the apology." Eleanor read it twice. She did not ask what might have been. She simply set another cup on the table and said, "Stay for tea. Sometimes regret is the only honest bridge between two quiet shores. And sometimes the lesson is not how to go back, but how to go on. Gentler, clearer, grateful for any hand that will take yours without pretending it never dropped it." So if you find yourself in a kitchen where a mug is set down like a sentence, remember Eleanor. Remember the kind of strength that does not perform. Remember the choice to be warm when hot would be easier. And if you are the one setting the mug down, remember what leaving takes from you too. The chance to be the person who stayed and did the work. Eleanor grew old without growing hard. Thomas grew honest without growing small. They never rebuilt the first house. They built something like a porch between them where family could step up and sit a while, safe from weather neither of them could control. And the fog, it doesn't return when you're busy making light.